In today's show, Beats Fit Pro launches while others disappear or get cheaper, HomePod colours arrive, and your iPhone can call the emergency services in a car crash. Beats giveth and they taketh away. The Beats Fit Pro were stealth announced yesterday, adding to the main Beats range and offering a more sports-focused option. They're available in stone purple, sage grey, white and black, and they include the H1 chip with active noise cancellation, head tracking spatial audio, USB-C charging, and a $199 price tag. The only real noticeable omission here is MagSafe or wireless charging in general, but the buds look pretty cool. They are very similar looking to the Beats Studio buds, but they have a little wingtip that pops up and inside your earlobe, which is there to stabilise the buds while you are exercising. And by all accounts, those that have actually tried them found them pretty good and weren't dislodging in their ears. But just as new stuff shows up, Apple also discontinued the Solo Pro Powerbeats and Beats EP lines, and also discounted the Studio Buds and the Beats Flex, which had only gone up last month to $69 and now it's come back down to $49 on a discount. Why did you bother? But it does seem like Apple has no intention at the moment, at least, of getting rid of the Beats branding, even though that's been rumoured by several different people in the past. But right now, Apple seems more content with releasing new Beats, and that doesn't suggest they want to get rid of them. My theory, as always, is that the Beats are kind of more focused towards people that wouldn't associate themselves as an Apple customer, so maybe Android users that just don't want something that's Apple branded. Beats is far enough removed for them. Next up, Apple is basically expanding the fall detection of the Apple Watch and the iPhone to car accidents. So I guess basically the device would detect the sideways fall of an acceleration in the same way that it does fall detection, as the accelerations would feel very similar in a car accident to someone falling. And then the watch can automatically call emergency services for help. Presumably next we'll be getting stories about how the Apple Watch had warned people about health and heart issues in the past, and next about road accidents that they've been involved in and helped to get help there quicker. And as I mentioned in yesterday's show, HomePods in new colours are actually available now in orange, yellow and blue. Now I might have to steer clear of these in the Apple Store because they look pretty awesome and I don't really even get enough use out of my space grey one, but they do look really good. Now I did miss out the iCave Answers stuff yesterday because of all the mic problems we were having. Again, sorry about that. Still managed to get a few people in the comments telling me that my audio wasn't very good, even though that was literally how I opened the video, mentioning how my audio wasn't very good. But we're going to smash through your questions today, and if I could ask one favour, if you want to ask a question, use hashtag iCaveAnswers down in the comment section, but try and keep your questions a little bit shorter, to a couple of lines maybe, so that we can get through these a bit quicker. And a sub would of course be fantastic. Europe Auckland asks, with the MacBook Pro M1 Pro and M1 Max able to drive so much in the way of high resolution monitors, when will we see more choice in the 5K plus monitor market? The Pro Display XDR is beautiful, and for a YouTuber or professional content maker it's a good investment, but for the consumer it's a pretty big investment. With the MacBook Pro producing desktop performance, do you think we'll see consumer options in the 5K plus space? So the issue is, for consumers, I don't think 5K sounds like it's a massive improvement over 4K, but I do think that the options that we're going to get are likely going to be coming through Apple, and Apple has been making regular LCD displays at 27 inches in Retina 5K format for quite some time, so I don't see why they couldn't do that if that's what they wanted to do. However, it seems more likely that we're going to get a replacement display coming with mini LEDs, probably 27 inches as well, and potentially with an A13 inside to help run stuff. And Marcin Kowalczyk asks, iCave Answers, so will the new 27-inch iMac essentially be a one-to-one Pro Display XDR in all respects, with just the CPU stuffed into its back as an extra? Absolutely not. The Pro Display XDR for starters is 32 inches, this is 27 inches. The Pro Display XDR has 512 local dimming zones. The mini LED iMac is most likely to have 2,500 or more, because that's what we get in the iPad Pro and in the MacBooks Pro. And I think it might actually be too expensive to do that 3D milling for the iMacs as well in enough bulk. I think the Pro Display XDR is expensive enough that they don't have to make many. Uber Manonov asks, iCave Answers, I'm a full-time freelancer. I do graphic designer and mostly 3D rendering. I use Cinema 4D and Redshift. As we know, Redshift is GPU-based render engine. Advise me on the specification of MacBook 2021 is good for me. So if you're going to be doing a lot of work that is all kind of render based and a lot of kind of 3D rendering and graphics work, I would say go for the higher spec and go for as much RAM as you can, as much unified memory, because the unified memory in these MacBook Pros, in the M1 Pro and M1 Max chips, I would recommend getting the M1 Max and going all the way up to the 64 gigabytes of unified memory, because that memory is shared between your GPU and your CPU, so whatever needs it at any given time can make the use of it. That means you'll get more shaders, more all of the good stuff that you need for that. Arthur Swart asks, iCave Answers, how would you integrate Intel and Apple Silicon devices? I found a MacBook Air base model that had been returned within 14 days and took it for €649. I want to use my Mac Mini 2012 i7 as my media center, 4K Thunderbolt display and 2K HDMI TV. How can I get it all working? Can I use AirPlay for both? Do I need a 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi adapter for the Mini? Am I looking for an Apple TV? Would a single Bluetooth keyboard and mouse work fine on both displays? What does one do when new stuff isn't enough? The way that I would set this up would be I would use the Mac Mini as a media center PC and actually just attach it next to your TV, have that attached with whatever external storage you need, and Ethernet it into your router and straight HDMI into the TV. That would be my best choice, and that way you shouldn't need a 5 gigahertz adapter for the Mac Mini either, because you're just going straight Ethernet much quicker. I would also say the MacBook Air, if you've got a Thunderbolt display, I'm not 100% sure that Thunderbolt on that display is compatible with the Thunderbolt 3 that's in the MacBook Air. That would be something you'd need to look up. I really don't know how to advise you on that bit. And would a single Bluetooth keyboard and mouse work fine on both displays? I guess you mean on both computers. Yes, but you would need to get a specific kind, because most of them pair to a single thing. I believe the Logitech MX keys give you the option of 3 different devices that you can be paired to at the same time, and you've just got simple buttons on top that switch between. Obviously, the Mac Mini isn't going to be getting Monterey, so you're not going to get universal control there. Otherwise, you would have been able to kind of use everything a lot more seamlessly, but I'm afraid that one's a little bit old. James Apple asks, so what's going to be announced at the Spring Reloaded event? AirPods Pro 2nd generation, iMac Pro, higher end Mac Mini, a preview of Ted Lasso Season 3 and services. Hashtag iCave Answers. Well, I mean, right now your guess is as good as mine. That seems like a pretty reasonable list. I would still hope that we get our Mac Mini before Christmas in a press release, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Yuritech asks, iCave Answers, what would be your subscriber special for 10,000 subscribers? So right now we're planning to probably do a stream of some sort. We might be hitting 10,000 in the next day or so. So if that is the case, we'll probably do a live stream either Friday night or at the weekend at some point. And also the 10k does unlock a couple of things. It unlocks YouTube stories for me, which will be quite fun. And it also unlocks a merch shelf, so we can actually have merch sitting underneath these videos, so I think we will probably do another t-shirt drop too. Rob asks, iCave Answers, couldn't Apple manufacture discrete graphics cards for the PC or Windows market using its M1 Max 32-core GPU? The advantage being that if they put 2 of them together, 64 cores, then Apple would have a discrete GPU that can kick NVIDIA 3090's butts and not even use that much power or energy. Apple would have industry-leading GPU card, leaving NVIDIA, Intel and AMD in the dust. This would be great, especially since NVIDIA's future GPUs are rumoured to require even more power, like 600 watts. PS, I can't wait for the Mac Pro, which I'm sure will have the best GPU with at least 64 cores. Last part first, I think the Mac Pro is definitely going to have at least 2 M1 Maxes inside, possibly up to 4, with 4 giving that 128 cores of graphics performance, which is pretty much what Mark Gurman was talking about a year ago. In terms of Apple making a dedicated GPU for the Windows market, why would they? Surely they want to bring people... The whole point of what Apple does is to bring people into their ecosystem and bring people in to spend money with them, not on a piece of hardware that they never do anything else with, but think of any of Apple's hardware right now that doesn't kind of work with their services. I don't think there really are any. So producing just simple hardware that then gets put into Windows computers and doesn't bring anyone into Apple's ecosystem doesn't really make sense to me. Could they sell quite a lot? Yes. Will Apple make a lot more out of them by selling complete systems? Yes. Alan B unboxing some news. Hashtag #ICaveAnswers. Do you think that Apple could bring back the eMac? Now, if you don't know what the eMac is, that is basically their education model that they brought out around the same time as iMac G4, which was the sunflower one with the first flat panel TFT display that was in a mainstream Mac. I think it also came before that in the 20th anniversary Mac, but it was the first kind of mainstream Mac that contained them. So the eMac was basically a CRT version of this with the older style display. So I guess if Apple was going to produce an eMac, if you like, which is for the education market, that would use older display tech. So in that case, maybe the current iMac, the 24-inch, which uses regular LCD displays, could be considered an eMac. But I don't think there's going to be a new one on the way. Pedal Thang asks, iCaveAnswers, now that the new MacBook Pros have been released, do you think the 13-inch will be around for the long term, or will it be retired? It bears none of the MacBook Pro features or design of the newer versions and doesn't fit the new Pro branding. Now, I've said for a long time that I don't think the 13-inch MacBook Pro will stay around. There's a couple of options for what could happen. They could either just straight discontinue it and have the MacBook Air at probably $1,100 next year with its own mini LED display. They could introduce an M2 MacBook Pro that uses the 14-inch chassis, so you get the extra connectivity, you get the improved display, you get the improved camera, all that kind of thing, but at a lower price. I would think it would be around $1,500 for an M1, and then you go to M1 Pro at $2,000, M1 Max at $2,500. Those $500 gaps might work quite nicely. Vicious Dave for Life asks, iCaveAnswers, how long will Apple continue Intel support? When will Apple stop selling Intel Macs? When will Apple end Intel support and say thank you for transitioning to our SoC platform, our Intel support is now over? This is one of those things that I keep going backwards and forwards on. For one thing, Apple tends to give at least 5 years of support for any Mac that comes out, pretty much any of their devices that come out. In fact, it's 6 years, I believe, before they can be considered vintage. I don't think that there's going to be any issues for Apple to discontinue support for Intel models 5 years after the last one was released. Now, this is not until they stop selling them. I don't think that means we're going to have to get into 2022 when they finally stop selling them and then start the 5 years, so it comes to 2027 or something. I think it will probably be around 2025. I believe the last update to the Macs was the 27-inch iMacs. I know they both got kind of late 2019 updates, early 2020 possibly, and I don't think that we're going to get any more Intel updates now. I think we are done for that. So I think around 2025 is most likely. But that being said, as the years go on and new versions of the operating system arrive, yes, the Intel stuff is going to be compatible, but there's going to be more and more and more of the features that are exclusive to Apple Silicon because they need the neural engine to the level that they have inside in order for it to work. And I think Apple demonstrated that perfectly in the first year when Big Sur arrived, saying that the Apple Silicon versions would be able to run iPhone and iPad apps. Ian Spector asks, I just gave up waiting for the new Pro iMac, especially as it seems to be shrinking from 32 back to 27 inches. So I ordered the M1 Max 64GB and 4TB SSD. Now I want a large monitor to use with it. The XDR is just looking a little long in the tooth and only 500 odd local dimming zones, 60Hz max and no ProMotion. Do you think that Apple will update the XDR Pro 32-inch or launch a 27-inch to match the new iMacs, perhaps with A13 chip? I really don't want to buy the current display and find it upgraded in the first quarter. I need the M1 Max power to run the astrophotography software PixInsight, as my current Retina iMac takes over 5 hours of processing just to do the initial assembly of an image. So that's some pretty hefty workflows. I would say though the Pro Display XDR doesn't really make sense in any situation. I don't think at this point. The number of dimming zones is crazy low. I do think we're not going to see a replacement display until probably WWDC next year in June, and that's because that's most likely the time that they would talk about the new Mac Pro. And that's the kind of time just like the XDR that we have right now launched with the previous Mac Pro. I think any future display is likely to launch alongside that. So right now I wouldn't recommend buying one of those, but you could do what I've done and grab yourself a 4K TV that's nice and big and throw that on your desk in the meantime. David Black asks, I gave answers with the revolutionary speed, power and efficiency of the M1 class of silicon. It seems that for the average user, perhaps even the pro user, these SoCs have the potential enough to make Apple laptops and desktops operate in optimal terms for a few years to come. There's so much headroom or unused potential in these SoCs that for the average user, with their more modest needs at least, one has to ask what are the benefits that an M2 or later chip might bring to someone in the market for a MacBook Air or iMac over the next few years. Do we define success in future consumer level M-class chips by some other metric, or will their speed, power and efficiency just grow the gap between what the majority of us who use Apple computers for browsing, word processing and content consumption need, and what future regular M, not Pro or Max chips will offer as Apple follows its silicon roadmap? So I think one of the things is that everyone just assumes that these chips, because they are replacing the CPU and the GPU, is that it's all about the raw power that's in the chips. It's not, because these chips are not only your power management, which affects your battery life in quite significant ways, but also the custom IP that's added in there. So the neural engine for AI learning, for optimization of images, but also the fact that Apple adds a lot of features directly into the hardware. So things like different video encoders and stuff like that. I think what you will find is that over time, as codecs change, Apple will add more codec specific hardware as well, which also helps to make sure that the way that it works with your iPhone is really good and things like that. So it won't just be about the raw horsepower and the speed of the chips, but also about what that custom silicon that they put inside can do that raw horsepower can't bring to the table. And at the same time, having an M1 and an M2 coming out doesn't mean that you should upgrade to an M2. It just means that there is a newer thing there when you are ready to buy something. So that's it for this show, guys. If you haven't subscribed already, hit that subscribe button. It makes me happy. We are so close to 10,000 subscribers, and that will make me even happier. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.